The future belongs to the mad. Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the most recent film on the Mad Max franchise, Mad Max Fury Road. And this is a film I've been looking forward to seeing for a while. The trailers really impressed me. And, well, just to keep it short, just a little bit of a preview of things to come. I liked the film, but I didn't love it. And more on that as soon as I get forward with this review. So, stay tuned. Mad Max Fury Road is a film directed by George Miller. It's also written by Brendan McCarthy, George Miller, and Nico Lathorius. It features cinematography by John Seal, music by Junkie XL, and it stars Tom Hardy as Max Rokitansky, replacing Mel Gibson. Charlize Theron as Furiosa. Nicholas Hoult as Nux. Hugh Keays-Byrne as Immortan Joe. Yes, it's the same Hugh Keays-Byrne who played Toe Cutter in Mad Max in 1979. Rosie Huntington-Whiteley as the splendid Angarad. Riley Keough as Capable. Zoe Kravitz as Toast the Knowing. You really never hear those names in the film. Abbey Lee as the Dag. Okay. Courtney Eaton as Cheeto the Fragile. And Josh Helman as Slit. Nathan Jones as Rictus Erectus. John Howard as the People Eater. Richard Carter as the Bullet Farmer. And iOATA as the Doof Warrior, aka the guy with the flamethrower guitar. And that's the cast and crew. Years after the collapse of civilization, the tyrannical Immortan Joe, played by Hugh Keays-Byrne, enslaves apocalypse survivors inside the desert fortress of the Citadel. When the warrior Imperator Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron, leads the despot's 5 wives in a daring escape, she forges an alliance with Max Rokitansky, played by Tom Hardy, a loner and former captive. Fortified in the massive armored truck, the War Rig, they try to outrun the ruthless warlord's henchmen in a high-speed, deadly chase through the wasteland. There are actually quite a few pros that I had for this film. Like I said before early in the review, it's a film that I liked but I didn't love. It's a film that a lot of people love. It gets a 98% out of 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. It gets an 8.7, if not higher than that, on IMDb right now. But in the end of the day, that doesn't really speak for everyone's opinion. That it just speaks for some people's opinions of the movie. And I don't have to agree with that, and you don't have to agree with it either. At the end of the day, ultimately, your opinion is the one that matters the most. If you happen to share my opinion or my thoughts on the film, cool. If not, that's fine too. I always try to encourage people to have their own thoughts and their own opinions on a movie, and not just try to go along with the rest of the crowd. If everyone else loves the movie, doesn't mean you have to either. If everyone else hates the movie, doesn't mean you have to hate it. It's at the end of the day, it's what you think. And this is what I think. There's a good amount of pros in the film, and I'll get to the cons and later. But this is time for pros. And I thought the direction by George Miller was really good. It was nice to see him come back to the franchise and come back to it with a good heart and a lot of passion this time, because it wasn't there with Thunderdome. And you can see why. I mean, he had just lost his best friend and producer of the franchise, Byron Kennedy. So you could see that his heart wasn't in it. And here you can definitely see that his heart's in it. And it was nice to see him direct a film like this instead of stuff like Happy Feet or Babe Pig in the City. It was really nice to see George Miller come back to the action genre that made him so famous, really. It's what made him a household name with a lot of people, was the Mad Max films. Now, the direction is really solid. He does a great job setting up his shots, but the cinematography by John Seal is equally as great to me. There's some really beautiful looking shots in this film. They shot day for night in certain sequences in the movie, and it actually has this really striking, wonderful look to it. The cinematography, direction, they all combine together to a really, really delicious mix on the screen. It's one of the most lavish, luscious looking post-apocalyptic films I've ever seen. It definitely has this huge size and scope to it, and that's in large part thanks to George Miller and the cinematographer John Seale and their work in the film. Um, I also really like Charlize Theron's performance as Furiosa. I even really like the character. I thought she was fantastic. She's the best bald-headed badass chick I've seen since G.I. Jane, and made me forget real quick about Sigourney Weaver in Alien 3. Um, I've always kind of enjoyed Charlize Theron as an actress, and she does a really good job here. It's a very memorable role. It's a new heroine for a new generation. And in many scenes, she blew Max off the screen. And that's kind of that's why I think she should have had her own film. I think this should have just been her film. I think the film should have just been Furiosa's film and Furiosa's story and just been called Fury Road. And I'll get into that more when I start talking about my cons. But Charlize Theron was fantastic. I really loved her performance. I thought she was great. I really liked the character, and it was really nice to see this type of character in a world like this. Because you had seen a female character that was kicking some ass in the other Mad Max films and Warrior Woman, but she dies. Here, Charlize Theron doesn't. She holds her own. In fact, she has most of the badass moments of the film. And I don't have a problem with that because I really like the character and I thought she did a great job. So I will have no trouble remembering Charlize Theron as Furiosa. Hugh Keays-Byrne as Immortan Joe. A great performance, a great acting performance. The character itself kind of sucks, but I'll talk about that later. But the performance by Hugh Keays-Byrne once again was great. He did a great job as Toe Cutter and did a good job here as Immortan Joe. I just wish she had more to do, but that's a whole other story. Nicholas Hoult as Nux. I really liked his performance. I liked the character too. A nice, well-developed character. He started out as a villain, started out as a young war boy who wants to please the Immortan Joe, and that's the main thing he wants to do. And before he heads off into Valhalla, and things don't work out as well as he'd hoped. And then he finally realizes how futile his original attempts were to please Immortan Joe and realizes real quickly that everything that he was about in his life is just wrong. And it was nice to see a character like that, a character who was part of the villain's agenda, who finally realizes how stupid and how pointless this agenda has been and realizes how much his life has been wasted for an ideal that just you can't live up to, and an ideal that is flawed and that isn't right. So it was nice to see that, and it was really too bad what happened to him in the end. But ultimately, I thought Nicholas Hoult still did a great job, and I'm really curious to see what he does next as an actor. The action sequences. That's what everybody seems to be pointing out is a huge pro, and it is. There's some shots in this film that are just jaw-dropping. Your jaw drops to the floor, and you pick it back up, and then it falls to the floor again. It really does have some really spectacular action sequences in it. They're a bit overlong for my taste. It could have punched them up a little bit with a little bit more editing or something like that, or a little bit of the cranked up filmmaking that George Miller is famous for with his other Mad Max films. But I can't really say the action sequences were bad. They weren't. They were good. They definitely had a lot of good moments to them. Good choreography. They definitely were unique. And yeah, I definitely did enjoy the action sequences in this film. And you could probably make an argument that this is the most action-packed film in the franchise, and it is, but I don't think it's the best, but I'll get to that later. But the action sequences, when they are there, are definitely really fun to watch and really well done. Could be a little bit more better in my opinion, but they're still really good. The production design, really great. Did a great job creating this world and this unique look for the film. And a lot of practical effects, a lot of sets. Now they did add CGI to it later, but it's not as noticeable as some of the other CGI effects were. It are in other movies. So yeah, the production design is really great. it definitely does create this very unique, special world for the film. And it's the first Mad Max film to me that just really expanded the world of Mad Max. It just made it just really large in size and scope. There's some shots of the production design that just is just as jaw-dropping to look at as the action sequences. Same thing goes for the visual effects. The sandstorm scene I thought was really well done. Some really great CGI. And this is a film where I think a lot of people in Hollywood should take a page from. Take a look at Fury Road and look at a film that used a lot of practical effects, but then also used a lot of CGI, but they ended up coming to them together. They ended up coming to an agreement with one another, and they shared the screen. Not one dominated the other. They helped each other out. The CGI helped out the practical effects, and the practical effects helped out the CGI. This is one of those films where it was the best of both worlds, and the CGI enhanced the practical effects. And that's what computer-generated imagery was created for in the first place. It was never created to replace practical effects. It was created to enhance it, to help it out, to do things that practical effects were incapable of doing. And to this day, there's just a lot of films that just have CGI just replace stuff that you can't do better than with real practical effects. They replace fire, they replace water, they replace blood, they replace these things that just do not work. I've still yet to see any CGI water that looks like the real thing. Same thing goes for fire or blood. It's just you need the real thing. And sometimes with CGI you can just copy a real explosion and then make it bigger with computer generated, with programs and so forth, but it's not entirely a computer generated image. It's a picture that they took of the explosion, which is a real fireball and a real explosion, and then they would digitally put it into other scenes or put it into more explosions to make the scope bigger. Um, so they did that with some scenes in this film. They did that with they also added other things to make the sets look bigger and more to them. They added some CGI. It's kind of like sort of like matte painting. And CGI in a lot of ways started out kind of as just being a slow little, hey, let's replace the matte painting. Let's do stuff we couldn't do with practical effects, like the effect for Tron, or they experimented with stuff like The Last Starfighter, or in Young Sherlock Holmes, there's another experiment where they did a stained glass night that was entirely in CGI. That was the first film to have the first ever fully animated CGI image. Really, was the not necessarily fully animated CGI image, but the first fully animated. It was definitely a first, and I have to look it up again, but it's definitely a first for filmmaking that's kind of overlooked. Young Sherlock Holmes with the stained glass night. It's definitely one of the first in terms of CGI. So was Last Starfighter, and of course you have The Abyss, and then you have T2. But in Jurassic Park, but if you look at Jurassic Park, a lot of the effects were practical. There was only a little bit of CGI. So that's the thing. CGI was originally created to enhance practical effects, not replace it. And Fury Road is one of those films that showcases that and showcases how successful that is and how great that merger is and how great that works, how well it works. So I really hope that this gets more filmmakers and more studios to let's not replace practical with CGI right off the bat. Let's try to see if we can do some things practical, and then we'll try to add some CGI down the road. But let's not do everything in CGI because there's still some things that just don't look right in CGI. Another one of them is people. So I'm really glad that Fury Road had real stuntmen. That was really nice to see instead of a CGI guy flying in the air, which is completely fake and never looks right because they can't seem to get physics correct. But anyway, yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, the visual effects were definitely really well done in this film. They even used visual effects to give Charlize Theron her character her missing part of her arm. They used visual effects to do that, which is really impressive. I thought it was a prosthetic or something, but no, they used visual effects for that, which makes it even more impressive. I couldn't really tell. So that kind of stuff CGI has gotten a lot better with, but if you're creating a fully CGI animated person, or it just doesn't look right, the physics aren't right. If you're creating fire, I mean, look at the film Gravity, for instance. I really liked the movie. There's a lot of CGI in that I didn't know was CGI, but when the flame started, I knew that was CGI. So, part of me can see why, because they want to deal with fire because it's dangerous, or they want to have CGI stuntmen because they don't want to risk people's lives. But it just kind of ruins the image. It ruins the illusion, so to speak. But Fury Road is not one of those films. Another huge pro for me is the score by Junkie XL. Awesome. Now, is it my favorite score of the year? No. My favorite score of the year is Kung Fury. Because I bought that soundtrack as soon as I saw the movie, and I just listened to it on my MP3 player today, and it's awesome. But I still like Junkie XL's work for this film, especially some of the main themes. It definitely is one of the better scores I've heard in recent years, so it definitely does work with the film. It's great. I really do wish that the Mad World cover that was used in the trailers was actually a real song, though. That's the one little thing I really wish was actually there for this score. Is I really like that cover of Mad World, but I guess it's not a real song, which is really too bad, or it's not released officially. I wish it was, but either way, great score. Really fit the film really well. Added a lot to the action sequences. Added a lot to the film. It was really fun to hear, especially the guitar licks that the Doof Warrior was playing. Those are pretty awesome. The vehicles. Great vehicles. Once again, kind of ties into production design. But it was nice to see these type of vehicles again that George Miller's famous for with the franchise. The tank, which has what looks like an Oldsmobile or something with tank treads. No more cars with cowhide on them. No, we didn't go to that stupid shit. We're gonna have more, some actual really cool looking vehicles. Good bikes, some nice looking bikes. Um, the war rig itself looked really good. Yeah, the vehicles were every bit as good as a lot of the other vehicles in the franchise. Right up there with some of the best in the Road Warrior and Mad Max. It was nice to see the V8 Interceptor Police Pursuit Special again. Not so nice to see what they did to it, but that's enough. That's in the cons section. But it was still nice to see it. So yeah, good, really good, fun, crazy, cool-looking vehicles. That's exactly what you want out of a Mad Max film. And there's no better way to end the pros section with my favorite part of the film, the biggest pro for me, the Doof Warrior, iOATA, the guy who's blind and he's hooked up to these giant speakers and he's playing a guitar that shoots fucking flames. I mean, it doesn't get more awesome than that, except maybe for Kung Fury. To me personally, the best Fury that I've seen this year is still Kung Fury, but that's just me personally. But I still enjoyed myself. I still did like a lot of things about Fury Road, as you can see that it listed off a decent amount of pros. But yeah, Doof Warrior's awesome. If you don't know what I'm saying, you need to see the movie. You'll see for yourself. Uh, it's really insanely awesome. It's something you could it's something that would not be out of place in Kung Fury. And it's actually something I wish there was more of. The kind of stuff that you had with the Doof Warrior, the guy with the guitar that was shooting flames. Flamethrower guitar. I mean, a flamethrower guitar is just awesome. So yeah, but yeah, decent amount of pros for a film that I ultimately did like. I just didn't love. And coming up next, you'll see why. Now we get into the cons, the problems that I have at the movie, the things that made me not fall in love with it like a lot of other people did, the things that made me not want to call it the greatest action movie of the decade, which is really what Chris Stuckman said. He said it's the greatest action movie of the decade. I'm like, I'm sorry, I do not agree with that. I don't, and I would never say that anyway, because for something to be great, it's subjective. Any kind of taste in film or what people like or don't like is subjective, and it's up to personal opinion. So I'd never call something the greatest ever because I'd never be able to prove it. It would never be true. I'd basically be lying to you if I said this is the greatest action movie of the decade. That's BS in my opinion. Is it a good movie? Is it one of the better action films I've seen of the decade? Yeah, probably, but I still think there are better ones. Enter Tomorrow, I thought was a better film than this. I love that. It was one of my best theatrical experiences. This was had its moments, but I don't know. You'll see when I get down to get through this list. You'll see why I feel the way I do about this movie. I didn't fall in love with it. I wasn't blown away by it by someone like so many people were. There were some action sequences that really did, and some shots in the film that were like, wow, that's really cool. But the film as a whole, just I don't think it's a 5 out of 5 star flick. I don't think it's a 98% out of 100. I don't think it's 8.7 out of 10. I don't think that. But that's just me personally. And if you feel that way, cool. That's awesome. To each their own. I have no issue with that at all. But anyway, one of the biggest things for me, I thought the pacing. I thought for a film that has a lot of action sequences, I thought that the action sequences were, well, they were a bit too long. If I can go to the bathroom during the middle of an action sequence and then come back and it's the same people fighting the same guys and it's the same chase and the same action sequence, the action sequence is a bit too long. Um, it's like they had multiple different long chase scenes, like the end of the Road Warrior, but it was just they just extended them, and they're trying, and it just didn't have that same really breakneck speed as a lot of these other the other Mad Max films did. It kind of looked like it was moving in slow motion at points for me personally. It was kind of like I'm paying more attention to the choreography and how these things are set up instead of the actual action. It was kind of interesting. It was like especially near the end with the people going on these could look like a Cirque du Soleil routine. And I've seen Cirque du Soleil shows, multiple Cirque du Soleil shows live. So that was kind of like seeing a Cirque du Soleil show. And it was cool, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I'm paying more attention to that than I am to these other things that are happening around in the action sequence. It's like, it's just a spectacle. It was like, hey, here it is, it's epic. But at the same time, it was like, I miss that kind of down and dirty, uh, cranked up style that George Miller used for the action sequences in the other Mad Max films, which I thought was sorely missing in a lot of these action sequences. Now, I've read that he did speed up the camera, but it just didn't look like that. It looked the same as it did in the other films to me. It wasn't sped up enough. It wasn't cranked up enough. There's definitely a lot of scenes where you saw the cars explode where it looked like it was in slow motion, probably to enhance the 3D effects. Um, and yeah, it could have used that cranked up, sped up camera work for me. And then there was quite a few moments before the final chase during these slow moments of the movie that actually made me yawn and want to look at my watch. I'm not kidding. It really honestly did. And I think that's because the action sequences were so long and so drawn out that the film has to take more than one breather. Because it can't just be nothing but action after action and action. But then these slow breather seconds, these moments where the film slows down are just boring. Because you're used to this crazy, big, giant action spectacle, and these slow moments are kind of dull and boring, and you're not interested in it, and you just want more of that action. So, in all honesty, I know you can't have just action and more action and action and action, but sometimes you can. And sometimes that might not be a bad idea, especially with a film like this. It's just one giant chase anyway, so just should have just had it be a giant car chase. Have a little bit of some character development here and there, but we don't need to slow down. Keep that pace. Look at a film like Speed. Speed doesn't have barely any slow moments in the movie. From the beginning, it hooks you, it just keeps on going, and it just doesn't stop until the movie is over. There's some slow moments, but they're very brief. I think for Fury Road to be a really great action film to me, it should have taken a page from Speed and been a breakneck chase action movie where you're gasping for breath. You're like, it just keeps coming and keeps coming, and there's more and more action, there's more and more chases, there's more and more craziness. But it didn't do that. It has a lot of these moments near the end where it slows down to a crawl. And yeah, there's a little bit of the guy at night shooting at them, and it's trying to be suspenseful, but it didn't work for me. They're stuck in the mud, literally, and it just wasn't that suspenseful to me. And especially showing the shot of Max going after the guy, and then you just see an explosion in the background, and you see him come back with all the gear that they need in the night scene. I was like, that's fucking lazy. That's lazy and that's shitty. Why didn't we show Max take out the guy? He's blind. So what? And it wasn't just one guy. It was a bunch of other guys in that tank car too. So it would have been it would have been a nice moment for a good badass action scene for Mad Max to go on and take on all these guys one by one and take them out, and we get to see it instead of going this artsy fartsy fucking route and have an explosion in the background and then have the girls hold a gun, Furiosa hold a gun because she doesn't know if it's Max or not, and then it's Max who reveals himself. He's got the gear and he's got some blood on his face. What's up with these aftermath shots of what should be badass scenes that we should be seeing? It's like Furious 7 did that too in the beginning of the movie, where you have Jason Statham's walking through the hospital and everyone's knocked out and it looks like he kicked a bunch of ass, but you never saw it. This is fucking lazy to me. Why don't you show me the ass kicking? Don't show me the aftermath. Who wants to see the aftermath? People want to see the asses get kicked. And I don't see anything wrong with that, but people like that other approach of showing the aftermath, to each their own. But I'm the type of guy who wants to see those asses get kicked. And I thought that sequence when Max and Furiosa and the wives were stuck in the mud, literally, drug on for a bit too long and hurt the pacing of the film, among some other things. Hanging out with the women or the grannies, warrior grannies, and talking about whatever, and I don't fucking care. But that's just me personally. I know a lot of people think this is expertly paced and it's tighter than it's tightly wound and it's paced like a powder keg. But to me, that was the Road Warrior. That had some slow moments too, but it still felt like there was this building suspense, and it just exploded at the end of the movie. But here it has the action and then it just slows down, takes a break, takes a breath, then it picks up again, then it slows down and takes another breath, and then it picks up, and then it's but that's a format that I guess is it's subjective. Not everybody likes that. I don't personally care for that in my action film. I just want keep going, keep going, keep the runaway train going. Don't stop it. But that's just me personally. Immortan Joe. A lot of people point out how awesome this villain is, how great he is, and I gotta be honest. I think he was a shitty villain. Now, was it a shitty performance? No. Like I mentioned in my pros, Hugh Keays-Byrne did a great job. His acting was not the problem. The villain was shitty. What the hell did the villain do other than look menacing and have a menacing voice? Please. Type of the comments below. What did he do that was up there with the great villains like Darth Vader or even Ivan from Air Force One, played by Gary Oldman, or even Alan Rickman's character from Die Hard, Hans Gruber, or even Clarence Boddicker from RoboCop, or even Kane from RoboCop 2. What did Immortan Joe do that was so badass that made you fear him and put him up there with some of the best villains in film? He didn't do anything that bad. It was like Toe Cutter all over again. It's a good performance, but the character is not given much to do. I don't count him shutting off the water as being a badass moment that you should fear him. because for the most part, he's just a fat, asthmatic old man wearing a badass outfit and sporting a badass voice. That's it. He doesn't do anything that is remotely badass. And I was more intimidated, definitely more intimidated by Humongous, or even Wes. Wes played by Vernon Wells was a better villain than a Morton Joe. Morton Joe was a shitty villain to me. I didn't really care for that. It was a good look, and it was kind of a wasted performance. You have a good look, a cool new villain, and he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do anything badass. He just sits in his car, gives orders, and doesn't even shoot the gun that he maybe shoots it once, but it doesn't do anything. If he did anything, it didn't leave an impression. And I just miss those days of when you have a villain that not only looks cool, but not only sounds cool, but he actually does cool shit. I mean, can we have villains like that? I mean, we had one like in Skyfall. I really loved Javier Bardem's performance because he was a villain who was charismatic and he was a good performance, but he also did a lot of, evil shit. Like, he definitely did have some moments that, oh shit, this guy is fucked up. You don't want to fuck with him. There's never that moment with Morton Joe where I was like, man, I don't want to mess with this guy. Humongous, I didn't want to mess with him because he's a freaking bodybuilder. He ripped me in half. And he also has Wes, so he'd probably kill me too. So I wouldn't want to mess with him. So, yeah, I thought he was a shitty villain. That's me personally. If you can love a Morton Joe and enjoy him and think he's right up there with some of the best villains ever, but that's definitely not how I felt about the villain. I thought it was pretty shitty and honestly kind of disappointing. Got dispatched pretty easily too. Badass way. Get his face ripped off by Furiosa. Remember me. But and it was a good practical effect. But at the end of the day, it was still kind of a shitty villain. Fat women with their titties getting milked and half naked and the half naked bearded midget. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. These are both images I do not want to see. I didn't want to see, and I have no desire to see again. Especially fat women with their titties out getting milked. I didn't want to see that. I don't know what George Miller was thinking. I'm all for the crazy weirdness, like with the Doof Warrior playing the guitar that shoots flames. But fat women with their titties out getting milked, no. A bearded midget, no. We don't, what the hell? No. I want more of the craziness that inspired you to have the guitar playing guy who shoots flames out of his guitar. Not fat women with their tits out getting milked. Don't want to see that. But I really could have used more manic energy in the film. I would have loved for it to go all out with its craziness like it did with the Doof Warrior. But not to that extent. Not all out with its craziness with more fat women with their titties getting milked and multiple bearded midgets. No, I mean bearded little people. I apologize. I'm sorry. If I offended anybody. But really, bearded little people. I don't, I didn't want to see bearded little people and women with their titties getting milked. Let's have even more of that kind of stuff. No, less of that, more of the Doof Warrior type craziness. I would have been up for that. I felt the film could have used a little bit of that. Fury Road could have taken a page from Kung Fury and went even more off the wall and crazy with its concept and with its approach. The story, I thought it really does feel like the end of The Road Warrior, just stretched out to its limits. Even when I read the synopsis to you folks in the plot section of this review, did it sound a bit familiar to you? Because it sure did to me. It's another long big chase, and once again, Max falls into a group of people and has to help lead them to safety. This is the third time that this has happened in a Mad Max film. He did it in The Road Warrior. He fell into Papagallo's force. He fell into their encampment, and he decided to help them, lead them away from Humongous's forces. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. He gets saved by those kids and then decides to help them find their way to Tomorrow Land and escape from Annie Entity and her warriors. Fury Road. Mad Max meets with Furiosa, decides to help her and help her on her mission to lead her and the and the wives to safety, away from Immortan Joe and his forces, and to lead them to a better place. It's the same plot, the same story in a Mad Max film, with some little things changed here and there, but it's still ultimately the same story with the same ultimate goal for the third time. Does Mad Max do anything else other than team up with people, help people out, and then lead them to safety? Does he ever get hunted for sport by a bunch of crazy wasteland guys? Does he ever get to have another revenge spree? Does he ever actually get to become the Punisher of the wastelands? I'm just saying, it's the same thing. You would think by the fourth movie, Max would do something different this time around. Instead of the same thing for the third time in the franchise. That's just what I'm saying here. The story was kind of weak. It's another reason why I don't love the film is because it's another sort of repetitive sort of thing. It's another story arc that we've seen done before in other Mad Max films. It would have been nice to see him do something else other than decide to team up and help a bunch of people get to safety. It's there's only so many times you can do that before it does get a bit old. And I'm pretty sure it isn't that old for people who aren't really that familiar with the other Mad Max movies. But I am, and I just watched all three of them before I saw this movie, and it definitely is something that I noticed. Character development. Other than Furiosa and Nyx, there is not much of it. The wives are all stereotypes, and they have little reason for you to care or give a shit about what happens to them. Same thing goes for Max. He has no character development, unless you count him having hallucinations of some little girl that he never had. I know George Miller's saying it's a sequel to Thunderdome. What, really? I didn't know Mad Max had a little girl. He didn't have a little girl, he had a little boy. And I didn't and if it was a sequel, Max would be the age of Immortan Joe, not younger than he is. So it's a reboot. It's a reboot. It's what it is. It doesn't make any sense for it to be a sequel because Tom Hardy is, for one, too young to be the same Mad Max, and some of the stuff you see in the film, like the little girl he has hallucinations of. Are you supposed to tell me after his family got killed that he settled down for again, and then enough for the little girl to grow up, and then his family dies again, and then he's in the wastelands again? He found another V8 Interceptor. It was supposed to be the last one, but he found another one too. He found another one, even though it was supposed to be the last V8 Interceptor. It was even called the last V8 Interceptor in the Road Warrior. But see, that's why I think it's a reboot, not a sequel. If it's a prequel to Thunderdome, that might work, but I don't know if it's a prequel to Thunderdome. And either way, you still have that thing of this little girl. Where did the little girl come from? He never had a little girl. He had a little boy. He never had a little girl. He never did. So where does this little girl come from? Is it his daughter that he never had? Where? I just really don't know where that came from. It bugged me even when I saw the movie. I'm like, wait a second, he doesn't have a daughter? Where is this coming from? Why is he hallucinating a daughter he never had? He doesn't hallucinate something. You think he hallucinate his son, not a daughter he never had, but maybe it's because he's hallucinating. It doesn't matter. I guess all bets are off. But yeah, Mad Max, if this is not the Max I know. Um, this is another Max. This is another guy named Max. You don't really care about him. I that's why I would have rather just seen this movie be Furiosa's film. Call it Fury Road and be all about Furiosa from the start, and then it also gives more time for the wives to give them character development. Because other than that, they might as well just be a bunch of mannequins that they're carrying around, because that's about as much of character development that they get. And the first time you see them, it's just a scene straight out of a softcore porn. They're pouring water on their legs. I half expected to hear the song Cherry Pie, and then a car drive up, and they start soaping up with suds and start washing the car with their tits rubbing against the windshield, or the side, or the fucking passenger side. Really? It was just straight out of the softcore porn. People say this is a feminist propaganda piece. The first shot you see of these sister wives is in slow-mo of them taking water and pouring it all over themselves. This isn't a feminist propaganda piece. They don't have any character development. They're just pretty things. There's one, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley is just there to be pregnant and then bitch and whine about getting grazed by a bullet. That's about it. Performances aren't really much to run home about. The characters don't have anything. They're pretty much stereotypes. Rose Huntington-Whiteley is just a pregnant. She's just pregnant. She's always pregnant and whatever, and that's all she's there for. She's a breeder. She's there to be pregnant and look pretty. The other actresses, Zoe Kravitz, she's trying to be a tough, independent woman. She's trying to be like Furiosa. There's another girl who's a terrible actress, who I think is the one that's supposed to be the one that's, the one that's really aloof and whatever. Cheeto the Fragile, played by Courtney Eaton. I think that's who it is. Yeah, Cheeto the Fragile. And she's just she's just weird. She's one of those weird chicks. That's another stereotype. The woman that's just weird and out there. She's aloof. She's innocent. Yeah, she's innocence personified. Um, Riley Keough, who I actually liked her as capable. She's still technically another stereotype. She's a lovebird. She falls in love with Nux. I still like her though. I thought she was a very gorgeous woman, and she had a personality that I did find attractive, and also I did find it something that I noticed. But her character really doesn't have that much to her either. And then you have the one Abbey Lee, who plays the Dag, who's a character who doesn't want to leave the relationship. She wants to go back to Morton Joe. He could still give us another chance. Which is, I don't know, is that a reference to an abusive relationship? Is that a little dig? Is a little something to throw out there at the screen to be a little bit deeper? Hey, she wants to go back to him. We can't. It's too late. We can't go back now. But no, he provides for us. He'll help us. He'll forgive us. It's too late. Is that a little take at abusive relationships? Maybe it's just me, but maybe I'm reading too far into it. But anyway, yeah, not much for characters. Other than Nux, who's well developed, and Furiosa. Mad Max might as well not even be in the movie. That's kind of how I feel. He's just there. It seems like Mad Max is just in the movie to sell tickets. And I'll get to that later, because Mad Max himself is actually one of the cons that I have. So yeah, character development, there's not much. There really isn't. And I would at least like to know a little bit more about these characters, to care about what happens to them. So I don't just treat these women like they're just, like they said, we're not things. Well, they kind of are treated like things in this movie. The wives are basically just storage. Somebody's taking cross country and taking them to some other place. They don't have very much character development, if any at all. So it's like this message of the film is women aren't things, but in this movie, those wives are technically just things. They're storage. Like I said, they might as well just be mannequins. They would have just as much character development. So yeah, and yeah, I really think that Max is very secondary to the film, and you could have replaced him with Nux and have Nux do what he did, and the film would not have suffered one bit. Here's a really big con for me, and it might not be big for other people because maybe they don't really like this car, or don't think it's one of the most badass cars on film. But I love the V8 Interceptor, the police pursuit special that was in the Road Warrior and the last half of Mad Max. And they bring it back. You bring back one of the most badass movie cars ever, only for it to crash in the first 5 minutes of the fucking movie and then get blown up again at the end of the movie. What was the fucking point of bringing back the V8 Interceptor Police Pursuit Special to the big screen if you're just going to crash it again and blow it up again? What was the point of that? I'm just saying, what the fuck was the point of that? You could have at least given it some moments in this film before it blew up or crashed. You had a perfect moment for that when Mad Max is hanging, Furiosa's holding on to Mad Max during the end chase, and he sees the guy who's driving his car, and maybe she could have swung him onto the hood of the car. He'd beat the shit out of the guy, take his car back, and get in a cool chase with that. I would have been up for that. It would be awesome. It would be cool. Give the V8 Interceptor its due. Instead of it has its moment. Max gets it back, and Mad Max and the Road Warrior, and then it gets blown up. It's like it crashes and blows up. It's like and that sucked then, and it sucked even more in this movie because they brought it back just to blow it up and crash it again. Come on, why? I'm just, it boggles my mind. I don't get it. I really don't. Some other things I don't get is some of the dialogue. There's really not very many memorable lines in this one. Uh, except for Furiosa's "Remember Me" line, but that's only memorable to me because of how she kills Joe. I mean, other than that, would you ever really remember that line of dialogue? No, you only remember that line because she says it, and then his face gets ripped off. Um, the rest of the dialogue is forgettable and full of annoying war boy speak. Dear God, it was so annoying. It was like they were on freaking crack. Please, I don't know what you're saying, and I don't really even probably want to know what you're saying. Dear Lord. Fuck. Shut up. And also I thought there were some really pretentious lines of dialogue that I'm like, oh, come on. You're a Mad Max movie. We don't need to go do that. And then speaking of pretentious, I thought the movie was pretentious at points. Now, was the entire movie pretentious? No. But to me, there were definitely a lot of moments, especially with the warrior grannies and all this other stuff and society, and a line like, men are the reason why this world was destroyed or something. I'm like, no, it's because of World War III, but whatever, this besides the point. But there's just a lot of scenes that try to be like, see, there's something deeper here. We're more than just a post-apocalyptic action movie. We're a deeper, more thought-provoking film. And I'm like, whatever you were trying to tell me, it went way over my head. So that's the thing. It should have just focused more on making an action movie instead of trying to, I don't know, relay some message to me that I didn't get in the first place. I really think it did a great job relaying whatever message it was trying to get across. Maybe it's me. Maybe there is no message it's trying to get across. Maybe it isn't pretentious. But it kind of did kind of appear that way to me in more than a few scenes. Like it's trying to be like, we're bigger than just this movie. There's more. It's really self-important. See, this is really important, and I'm like, it's just an action movie. Why are you doing this? None of the other Mad Max films did that. And the movie even ends with a quote. I don't remember any of the other Mad Max movies ending with a quote. I mean, you had the little bit of the prequel, the little prologue in Road Warrior, which is cool, but I don't know, just there's something about this movie that just felt like it was just trying to underline, just bury this message and try to relay it to you, but trying really hard to do it. But to me, it just didn't work, and it just took away from the film. Just focus more on being an action film, less on trying to send a message to me about about men's place in society or whatever, or women are not things, women are treated wrong, and I don't really want to call it a feminist propaganda piece because I think that's just, I don't know, bunch of misogynistic bullshit, but that's me personally. But there definitely was some sort of message that it was trying to convey that dealt with something like that. And it could have done without that. There was no reason it needed to do that. Really. And then, hey, uh, with his cons, there's no better way to end it with the cons except with Mad Max himself. Tom Hardy's performance is alright. He's decent. It's a decent performance, but the writing for this character sucked. Even Tom Hardy, I don't know if he's being honest or not, but he was joking about it in a recent interview. Some guy was asking him like, "Hey, we read the script. Why are you surprised it was like supposed to be a man's movie and had these women in it?" He's like, "Haha, no. I'm just surprised that we even had a script or something like that." I'm like, yeah. Is that a little dig at the script? because he doesn't have much of that character. There's not much. You see some hallucinations of a daughter that, as far as I'm concerned, he never had. He does a little bit of narration in the beginning, eats a lizard, spends most of the movie being captured pretty much until he's let go. And then he doesn't say very many lines of dialogue, just grunts half the time. And then there's one scene which I like where he saves Furiosa's life, which was a nice bit of added humanity to Max that you hadn't seen in a lot of the other films. It was nice to see a little bit of humanity to the character again. Other than that, he was just, hey, we need some help. Beat up this guy. Or, hey, drive this truck for me. That's really about it, really. To me, Mad Max is more than that in the other films. People say Mad Max has always been a secondary character in the franchise. I highly disagree with that because just because he doesn't have all the screen time doesn't mean he's not the main character. Here's a prime example of that. Big Trouble in Little China. You could definitely, ultimately, Jack Burton at the end of the day is sort of a sidekick, but he's the main character. Are you ever going to say that Wang's the main character? Are you going to say Egg Shen is the main character? Are you ever going to say that? No, because it's Jack Burton is the one who who you probably he's the guy who gets up into this situation along with his friend Wang, but he's the main character, even though technically he's in an ensemble cast with a bunch of other characters. But he's still the main character. He may not have all the screen time, but Jack Burton is still the main character. Case in point with Mad Max. Mel Gibson in the first Mad Max, it takes a little bit for him to show up, but for the rest of the movie, it's his film. It is without a doubt Mad Max's film. If I don't understand this feeling that the first Mad Max is not about Max. It is about Max. Just because you have a couple of other policemen in the beginning, before you see Max show up and cause Knight Rider to crash, doesn't mean it's not Mad Max's film. Because he hangs out with his friend Goose for a while and he gets some screen time, doesn't mean it's not Max's film. Because for the rest of the film, it focuses on Max and his relationship with his wife, and then it builds that up, and then they get taken away from him, then he goes on revenge. It's Max's film. The Road Warrior, it's still Mad Max's movie. You have a prologue that's narrated by the grown-up feral kid, but at the same time, the movie opens up with Max driving on the road in his Interceptor. He meets up with Papagallo and decides to help him. Helps the feral kid out, teams up with him. And he's the one that is the last hope that they had. Papagallo himself dies during the last chase in the Road Warrior, along with all of his other people warriors supposed to help him, and it was up to Max and the feral kid to stop Humongous and Wes and let Papagallo's the rest of his family head off into safety. It was Max is the only one that was left to do that. The feral kid helped a little bit, but it was Max that did it. It was Max that finally was the one that led them to safety by himself. Basically, feral kid all he had to do was get the shell. We couldn't even do that. So Wes showed up, scared the shit out of everybody, and then Max crashed Wes into Humongous's truck. Killed them both, caused the tanker to crash, and then the Papagallo's family went off into safety with the gasoline in the school bus. The film ended with feral kid's narration, but the last shot of the film was of Mad Max. They called him the Road Warrior. Thunderdome. Max is the one that you see in the beginning of the film. He's the one that's gets the mission from Anti-Entity to take out Master Blaster in the Thunderdome. Doesn't succeed. Gets sent off to the desert. Kids save him. Then he leads the kids to safety. He's the one that I'll make room with the car in a shitty way, but he's still the one that makes room so the plane with the kids and the pilot guy could fly away to Tomorrowland. In Fury Road, Max is a part of a team. He's not the last hope. He's a part of the team. He's a valuable member of the team, but he's still a part of the team. And there really is not very many moments with this character in this movie, because many of the characters is kind of bland and uninteresting because it's not very well written. I thought Furiosa blew him off the screen almost every single time they shared a scene together. And I personally just felt that Max, it's called Mad Max Fury Road, but he's barely really in the film that much, and really doesn't do that much. He gets a little bit of a fight with Nathan Jones, but it's not much. A little bit of some fisticuffs here and there. Maybe has a little bit of some gunplay, but not much. Nothing to the extent of the Road Warrior, where he's blowing people away with a shotgun. For me personally, nothing that Max did in this was as good as what Max did at the end of the Road Warrior. That's just me personally. That's why I think Mad Max himself was a pretty big con in this movie. Just felt like he was thrown in this movie because the studio didn't like the original idea George Miller had of Furiosa being the main lead of the film and it being just a spin-off of the Mad Max franchise, but not having Mad Max in it and just focusing on Furiosa and her story. And the studios were like, we're not greenlighting this unless Mad Max is in it. So it had a quick rewrite, and they wrote Mad Max into the film and have him be a guy who just is on along for the ride. That's what it felt like to me. He's just there along for the ride, and that's it. But yeah, I wasn't expecting this con section to be this long, but damn, is that a lot to say? But anyway, yeah, those are my cons for Mad Max Fury Road. As you can see, there's a decent amount of them. That prevents me from really loving this movie, from giving this movie really high marks. But that's just my personal opinion. So. Final verdict. What do I have to say about the film? What I liked it. I like the film. I don't hate the movie. I don't want this to appear like I hate it and it's a rant. It's not. Because I have a decent amount of cons that I'm talking about, it doesn't mean that the movie sucked or I thought it was terrible, or that it was shitty or overrated. When it comes to something being overrated, it's subjective. Really. I mean, that's a subjective thing. But do I think it wasn't as good as the hype made it out to be? Yes, I do. And that's why I'm not going to hype up movies anymore. I was really hyped for this movie. I was really looking forward to it. And after I left the theater, I was a little bit disappointed, and I'd be lying if I wasn't. So it doesn't mean that I hated the movie or it sucked. It just means it didn't live up to the expectations I had for it. It went below them a little bit. And I really, that's why I'm not going to have super high expectations for movies. It's the chances of the film living up to those expectations aren't very good. They're very slim. It's just a luck of the draw. And so, yeah, I like the film for a lot of the reasons I mentioned already in the pros section. And I didn't like the film for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned in the cons section. So since there's kind of an even amount of pros and cons, and there's one little bit of the pros that kind of overtakes some of the cons, this is the film that I'd probably say I liked as much as the first Mad Max, but but if it didn't have the action, if it didn't have the spectacle, if it didn't have those really great action sequences, take those away from this movie, it's a pretty bad film. There's not much else. So I think that's personally how I look at it. It's a lot of style over substance. And I can enjoy that sometimes, but this isn't really one of those times. And at the same time, this genre itself isn't one of my favorite genres. So I think that might be where it is. Where my problems might really lie with Fury Road. The post-apocalyptic genre itself is not one of my personal favorites. I don't like the Road Warrior and Escape from New York are the only ones I can really think of that I really love. And the rest, maybe I could with Steel Dawn's another one I could think of that I like. And I'd rather watch that than Fury Road. I'm not lying. This is my personal opinion. I think Steel Dawn was a better film than Fury Road. Steel Dawn with Patrick Swayze because yes, it's a low budget movie, yeah, it's a low budget film. It doesn't have the budget this movie has, but it has some really great sword fights. As a lead that I care about more than Tom Hardy, Patrick Swayze's character, Nomad, and it's a film nobody talks about. So I kind of do have a soft spot for that film because nobody talks about Steel Dawn. It's kind of forgotten about, and everyone's talking about Fury Road. Everybody's loving Fury Road, and that's cool. To each their own. I'm not one of those people. I don't love the movie. I would be lying to you if I said I did. But I still like it. I still liked the film. I still found it to be a good experience in the theater. It's just, it was a little bit disappointing, but that didn't mean that it sucked. It just means that I liked the movie. I thought it was, honestly, it's an above average film for me. That's my personal opinion. A lot of people don't agree with that. They don't have to. So that's how I feel about it. It's a 3.5 out of 5-star flick for me. Explosions and car crashes in the desert only go so far for me too. I'm more of a guy who likes crazy over the top 80s style action with badass characters and badass dialogue and badass one-liners and martial arts and gunplay. And this is kind of like almost like ballet at moments. I can watch Cirque du Soleil and ballet, but I don't know. I kind of don't want to see ballet in an action movie. That's just me personally. It doesn't work well in Gymkhana. I can watch that movie and laugh at it, but you kind of see what I'm talking about. But there's a little bit of that ballet sort of stuff in Road Warrior with Wes doing his acrobatic stuff, but I thought that worked really well. And it works well in this film at moments too, but there are moments where it just feels like it's just a ballet of action and explosions. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm maybe more a fan of the down and dirty approach. The guerrilla approach, or just give it to me, or just a little bit more fighting, a little bit more guns. For me personally. But it's not like the movie sucked. It's not like this. I'm saying the movie sucked. It didn't. I like the film. And it's definitely going to be on my list for one of my favorite films of the year. But I really don't know what else to say other than thank you for watching my review. I wasn't expecting it to be this long, but I guess I had a lot of things to talk about, and I hope you guys found it entertaining regardless. And I will see you guys later. See ya.